try to make sure that you're set up sustainably for the longer term.
Okay, welcome back to the Marketing Playbook, presented by Details Interactive. Here you'll take away 3 game-winning marketing plays every episode to take back to your team. I'm your host, Mark Friedman, and my career has been focused on direct-to-consumer marketing, direct mail, physical retail, and digital commerce. This is episode number 60, and today's guest is Kyle Widrick. Kyle is the founder and CEO of Win Brands Group, an omni-channel retail platform that buys and builds category-defining brands. The team at Win is looking for brands that are category leaders and ones where Win can bring their experience to help drive growth and continued profitability. Before we get started, a quick thank you, as always, to Max Brandstetter of the Wild Business Growth Podcast for producing this episode. You can reach him at maxpodcasting.com to help bring your podcast to life. Let's open the playbook. Ready, break. Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Marketing Playbook podcast. Today, I'm joined by Kyle Widrick. Kyle is the founder and CEO of Win Brands Group, an omni-channel retail platform that buys and builds category-defining brands. Win's enviable stable of brands includes Homesick, which is scented candles and home fragrance, Kalo, silicone wedding rings and accessories, Gravity, the original weighted blanket, and Love Your Melon, mission-driven outerwear. Kyle has spent over a decade honing the art of consumer-focused venture capital and brand building, raising millions of dollars and building businesses responsible for employing hundreds of people in the process. His background includes working side by side with billionaire, serial entrepreneur, and branding guru J. Christopher Birch, as well as founding multiple best-in-class investment and marketing operations in the U.S. and abroad. Kyle, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark.
Appreciate you joining me today. And, I think that, as I mentioned to you, I think your story is one that's really interesting. And especially for the folks that, have tended to listen to the show, it's kind of interesting. There's this early stage group of people that listen, that ping me over time. I've done a lot of mentoring. They're always interested in hearing from folks, like you. And then there's, people that are a little bit more senior in their career, either looking to make pivots in their own career or to learn from, the people that we chat with. So I think you'll hit all the folks that listen. I always like to get started, helps to set the stage for people that are listening, kind of your first story, where you grew up, anything in your life that might have foreshadowed what you'd wind up doing in your career.
Sure. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate being here. I would say my background is a bit unique, at least relative to folks that I end up spending time with professionally today. I grew up in a very small town in upstate New York, call it 3,000 people. My dad actually was an entrepreneur. To your question, he had a building business. So I got started really early with him. I was working with him when I was 14, 15. I guess I got sick of working for him, so I took on other jobs. I did every job from McDonald's to road construction to the supermarket overnight. I liked making money. I liked having some income myself, even as a teen. And I guess that carried forward to starting businesses.
And school, where did you go to school?
So I ended up going to Syracuse, which was actually kind of the closest notable university to upstate. And my older brother went to Syracuse. He was an architecture major and kind of led the way. And I followed him to Syracuse and did business.
And you obviously went there because you were interested in basketball and you wanted a great college basketball program, right?
Let's say, well, the sports didn't hurt. When I first showed up, they were still relatively strong in football. So this was Donovan McNabb days. He was actually a senior when I was a freshman. And then my sophomore year, to get into sports for a little bit, that's when Carmelo Anthony was at Syracuse, and they won the championship my sophomore year. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, I'm a Knicks fan. We started before the show, we were talking about the Mets. I'm a Knicks fan too. And, Melo wasn't exactly what we were looking for at the time he became a Knicks player.
Listen, he's had a great career, but has not been able to produce anything close to championship in the NBA. But I could tell you when he showed up at Syracuse, he brought an energy with him and brought a national championship his freshman year that we hadn't seen in 20 plus years. So he was very well respected on campus for that one brief year that he was there.
Yeah, I'm sure he was. Your first co-founder role was with a business, I believe, called Postgrad Apartments. What was that? And I can imagine how it came to be, but tell us.
Yeah, so I had this is a throwback to postgrad. I had a few businesses before that that really didn't get much of any traction. Believe it or not, we had an idea that at the time we called Wondering Where, that was similar to what Foursquare became, and we didn't have the right team, I guess, to make that work. But postgrad, we did. We got off the ground. We were generating interest on college campus and finding folks who were moving from college to a city, and ultimately generating leads and then selling those leads to brokerages within major cities. So, we built a good sized business. We were on over 30 college campuses, generating leads to 5 cities. And we sold it actually to a strategic in the space. And that was my first, positive outcome as an entrepreneur.
If you think back to building that business and kind of the experience you had, are there one or two things that stood out that were much more difficult for you than you ever expected it would be?
I think everything's more difficult than you expect before you get into starting your own business. I think there's an aura and an allure of starting your own business and what that outcome produces. But I think the road to get there is very challenging. I think, what I learned a little bit later is the people involved and ultimately the funding involved to get you there have a dramatic impact on where you land. But that was even before I learned that. I mean, we had what was a good idea with a good team. We pressed forward with a lot of momentum and ended up getting an outcome, but it certainly is more challenging than you would think going in.
Yeah, the one thing when I talk to people, or even they bring it up themselves, especially early stage, they talk about fundraising and how that is so much. It takes up so much more time than they ever expected, and was much more difficult than they ever expected it to be.
Absolutely. It's especially if you're not, traditionally networked and you have to go and find that network and sell into it. Again, I was born into a family upstate that did not have any background in finance or fundraising. And I was fortunate actually, I was able to land at a family office, a guy by the name of Chris Birch, and worked there for, what ended up being 6.5 years. And that really built up a strong network within the fundraising community. But before that, I had very little to any access.
Yeah, so let's talk about Birch Creative Capital. And for the audience that may not know, Chris Birch is.
Chris Birch is, one of the wildest guys you'll ever meet. Number one, I think anyone that meets him has a similar impression. He's most well known today for being the co-founder of the Tory Burch fashion business. So I met Chris and started working for him when he and Tory were still married, and they ended up getting divorced, but they owned that business together. And having more experience in consumer products businesses now than I did then, watching that business grow from zero to a $4 billion business was remarkable. And really, that had never happened in the history of fashion, to go from zero to that size within a short 10-year period. So really interesting learning and access for me to have during my time with Chris.
Is there one or two things that stood out to you? You talk about the interesting learning. What was it? Was it about product? Was it about the financing? Was it about the branding? What stood out for you?
I think relative to the Tory Burch business, one thing in particular is that business was built off one SKU, and that SKU was the ballet flat slipper. At one point we were selling 1 million of those shoes per year. So that equaled 200 million of revenue on a price point of 200 per pair of shoes. And we apply that principle today at Win. We look for businesses that have one very strong hero product that we can build behind. So that was kind of that business. And then two, with Chris, I talk about this a decent amount now when I look back. He invested first and foremost in the people, and he had a way of psychoanalyzing the founders and getting to know who they were and what they were about. And that to him was much more important than the business they were pitching him and the P&L of that business. So I think having that understanding and learning and kind of muscle memory for 6 years, and now applying that to businesses that we look at and ultimately founders that we partner with, has been very important.
Yeah, it's funny. I think I mentioned to you, I do a little bit of little investing in early stage businesses. And the thing for me, and I'm not you know, the big investor. For me, it's about the founder. Maybe I understand the business, maybe I don't, but if that investor is inquisitive and intense and has some intuition, but also has some technical skills, if they can sell themselves to me, then I'm in, and that's how I've tried to make my decisions, and it's served me relatively well so far.
Absolutely. I think regardless of stage, I think curiosity and tenacity are so important in this, especially in the entrepreneurial space, because you have to be curious, you have to keep learning. That's really table stakes to be able to be a founder and a successful founder. And the tenacity to just keep moving when things get difficult, which they always do, super, super important.
You've talked about when you were at Birch, your mandate was, deal sourcing. So how did you deal source? Was it, well, how did you?
So I think I was lucky in that role, in the sense that Chris, as the principal of the fund or the family office, he generated a lot of deal flow himself. And part of that, frankly, was being a larger than life character. He would run into someone that would turn into someone else that would turn into 10 more meetings on the investor side. It also helped that we wrote a lot of checks. I mean, we were writing hundreds of checks per year. So you're talking about several checks per week, ranging in size, but still very active in the space. And so what I started to focus on was narrowing in on segments and verticals that were of focus for us. And as an example, we started to narrow in on e-commerce very early. And that's ultimately what led me to leave and start my own business within the e-commerce space.
Yeah, that's a good segue. I was going to ask you, while you were there, all these businesses, they develop a thesis for what it is you will invest and how you will invest, and what makes it to where you actually write a check. If you think back then, what was the thesis of the business?
So we, at that time, as far as our investment thesis, we had to believe in this space from a macro perspective, but really the absolute decision was based on the founder, because we were investing at an early enough stage where we really wanted to see someone that we believed would be a good shepherd of our capital no matter what. Whether that took 0 pivots or 10 pivots, we felt like this person was going to return our capital. So we spent a lot of time with the entrepreneurs, and usually that was several different sessions to get comfortable with them as human beings.
And it's a two-way street, that you're giving them your money, but they're also making some decisions, if they're lucky, about who to take money from. So how did you position, yourself as the one that they should take the money from?
Yeah, we were known to be, I would say, very active and very vocal about connectivity. So we were fortunate, given our positioning and Chris's positioning, to be able to open a lot of doors. And if we had more time, I could go into crazy times and meetings with Kanye West and Lady Gaga, all kinds of kind of celebrity folks that came through the doors at one time or another. Any of these businesses within the consumer space, part of the effort really is product and execution, but part of the effort is also access and distribution. And that's really where we could help.
Yeah, it's kind of like sitting in Shark Tank, listening to them all talk about, how they can get you on, in a big box store.
That's exactly right. Shark Tank is, I watch Shark Tank a lot, actually. It's good for idea generation. And we've actually, at Win, we've looked at businesses that have actually presented on Shark Tank. I think, it's a good representation of what that bridge looks like between folks with good product and good brand ideas, and then the level of investor, diligence that sits on the other side. And a lot of the folks that end up walking on and pitching on Shark Tank don't have a lot of the access to the capital that those sharks do. So it's a really fascinating show that I enjoy.
Before we get to win, I learned something in the research here. I did not realize that you were a co-founder in BVA. I've seen Dylan a lot on LinkedIn. Then I was reading your bio and found that. So tell everybody what was BVA?
Yeah, so BVA is actually what I left Chris Birch to go do. And we were one of the first Shopify agencies. So we were building websites and doing performance marketing for the early Shopify customers. And this is back to 2013. So we met the Shopify founders before they went public. I remember when they went public at 17 a share. We saw them trading at as high as 1600 a share a couple months
1600.
ago.
Yep.
So got to know them, bet on them. In those days, they didn't do their own agency work. So when they got Kylie Jenner excited to launch Kylie Cosmetics on Shopify, they called us and said, hey guys, please don't screw this up. This is a big account for us. And we would actually build the website with the client and then oftentimes do performance marketing services. So everyone from Kylie Cosmetics to MVMT watches, Mizzen and Main, Boll and Branch, Untuckit, all the way up to P&G and Red Bull. We were very strong in that space. And I think one of the best things that we decided to do was to focus exclusively on Shopify. Most of our competitors were doing Shopify plus Magento plus Hybris plus Demandware. We put up a flag and said we're doing Shopify only, and we're really going to focus on being the best on this platform. The underlying thesis there, which I have to give Dylan credit for, was Shopify showed up to really democratize the e-commerce space. And the very simple way to think about that is, open up an app store, not dissimilar from the Apple App Store, and allow developers to build assets that could be used and accessible to all the merchants. So as a merchant, rather than having to spend 2 months and $30,000 building a feature set in an app, you could literally plug it in overnight and with a $30 payment on a monthly basis, have access to that. So it's a difference between living on a private island and having to run your own electrical system and network and plumbing versus living in Manhattan and just, signing a lease and being ready to go. So, we got behind it very early. I still cannot believe the size and the scale of the business that they've built based on where we met them, but really big fans of Shopify and continue to be fans of what they're building.
Do you have a direct-to-consumer business? I enjoy connecting with guests on this podcast because it reminds me what I love to do, strategic and tactical consulting for businesses like yours. If you'd like to speak with me about your business and see how you can add a fresh set of eyes to your team, contact me at mark@detailsinteractive.com. Now, let's get back to the marketing playbook. All right, so let's talk about Win, how that came. Well, maybe describe what it is first, and then we'll get into a little bit about how it came to be.
Sure. So it's very derivative of my time spent at the agency. So we built up BVA Commerce for 5 years, and we sold it to a private equity firm. And my experience there was, as I mentioned, working with brands like MVMT and Kylie. But the reality was there were tens of others, even hundreds of other businesses with really good brands and really good products that were unable to scale as they should because of operating issues. So the thesis was, could we not build a large team, what I now call a dream team of operators, and then start to plug in the brands and scale those brands together as a shared platform and an operating platform. So, we are an omni-channel retail platform today, powering several D2C brands that folks would know and be aware of. And we manage that via a shared platform and a shared team. So we take founders that are doing something incredibly well, we plug it into our shared team, and we're able to scale it faster and more efficiently as part of this shared platform and community.
I've been part of 4 multi-brand businesses, in my career, and the concept of rolling brands up, businesses up, and leveraging the back end, all makes lots of sense. Unfortunately, a lot of these businesses struggle because one of the reasons they struggle, in my opinion, is because they can't make up their minds whether they want to be centralized or decentralized, and they waver back and forth depending upon personalities within the brands, business climate. How do you think about that?
Yeah, so I think we have taken a contrarian approach, really from the start, which is, we've been building this consolidation engine in the midst of a massive bull market the last several years. So even the idea of consolidation within this bull market has been contrarian. In addition to that, we centralize, and I think most folks' understanding and thought around consolidation is, sure, we'll have the back office consolidated. So finance and legal, that can be a shared service. We really take things to the next level in the sense that all services are shared services. We are very heavy on the shared side. And so then the brand, as the subsidiary, what the brand focuses on is the creative, the community building, the product innovation, really as a solo focus. Like that, exactly the essence of the brand. That's what we have them focus on. The rest of everything is done as the shared team. So I would say, in comparison, we have much more of our operation managed through the shared team than most other consolidation approaches that I've seen.
We hit the names of some of the brands that make up Win at the top. And I've learned as I've done my podcast, when you talk to people that have multiple brands, you can't ask them who their favorite is. So I won't do that. But if you think of whichever the last one in was, what was it about that business where you said to yourselves, we've got to have that?
I appreciate not asking me to choose a favorite. That's always tough. The last one would be a business called Love Your Melon. So lym.com, Love Your Melon. Two founders, Zach and Brian, who actually started the business as a college project, and it took off and it became a success that they never would have imagined. And we met them just about the time that we like to meet founders, which is they'd had incredible success building a business, several tens of millions of dollars of revenue, and profitable, but they were struggling with the idea of how to take a Shopify D2C business and expand it to Amazon and expand it to wholesale. Because we know that requires a separate set of skills, a separate team. So you either have to invest in and hire that right team if you can find those folks, or you have to partner with someone like us. We met them right at the time where they were really trying to narrow in and figure out that strategy. And the brand itself, I mean, they've created a massive following within the broader, retail space specific to hats. They very early on made a decision to be a cause-based brand. So they have given back now nearly $10 million to pediatric cancer charities across the US. So tremendous cause, tremendous brand, best in class hats. So for us, what we look for are two things: a category leader, which we had that box checked for us within the broader outdoor and hat category. And then two, our ability to step in and help the business grow, right? Can we actually add value here? And in this case, based on timing and based on this, 3-channel revenue growth strategy that we deploy, it was very obvious that we could add value in those other 2 channels.
Is the value that you add capital? I mean, only capital, or is there core competency of, how to make Amazon work, better for you because you've got, digital advertising capabilities, within the team?
So we do get a lot of leverage and synergies with the scale that we have, but I would say the value add is really the people. I mean, we have been able to recruit an incredible team of people. So specific to our people running Amazon or our people running our wholesale sales book, I mean, these are best in class talent. So then the question for the brand becomes, would I be able to locate that person? Would I be able to hire that person? If I could, do I want to invest the resources to do that? And the other option becomes partnering with us. And so I think Brian and Zach were aligned that this was the right time to partner with a larger infrastructure to help tackle these issues.
You have businesses that are founder built. Sometimes they have difficulty giving up some of the control to others. They know pragmatically they need to do it because they're not going to be able to achieve the goals that they had, but it's giving up their baby. How do you navigate that with these folks?
It's a great question. I think it's actually, for me, that is our business. I think fortunately for me, I've been through it myself. I know what bootstrapping a startup looks like. I did that with my last business. I now know what raising a bunch of money and scaling a business looks like. I'm doing that now with this business. So I can relate to the founders on a very deep level. And, we had a call actually just before this with a company that I'm excited about in the space. We try to have very open and direct conversations with these founders and really give them, my perspective and our perspective on their options. And we are certainly not the only option, but I think we're one very good option for them as they consider their future. And I think for a lot of the founders that we meet with and ultimately partner with, they have a lot of their own personal identity tied into this brand that they care so much about. So where it goes forward and the sustainability of the brand matters a tremendous amount. And ultimately, they end up trusting us in that path forward in partnership. And, that's meaningful to us because, we've been lumped into conversations with other folks within the broader space, Amazon aggregators, a lot of different things happening. I was in an investor conversation recently where I talked about, we may be in the same stadium as those companies, but we're not playing the same game. We are focused on Shopify leading businesses that we can continue to grow sustainably for the next 10 years plus. And that's not going to change.
Is it a requirement that they are making money presently for you to take them on?
It is. So we actually only partner with profitable brands. We in all cases have been able to grow them, faster and ultimately expand that profitability under partnership with our ownership. But we do need to see that they've been able to make money. I've been saying this for 5 years plus, but the idea that we're selling products over the internet that you should be making a profit, not everyone agrees with me. But I think in this space, to be sustainable, to have control of your own destiny, you want to be able to do that. And certainly that's a focus for us. So when we get involved in doing the diligence on the brands that we end up getting excited about, they've been able to do that. And frankly, a lot of them have been bootstrapped. So they've always had to do that, regardless of whether they wanted to or not. They didn't have a choice.
In marketing, nowadays, it seems like every month there are changes that happen, over the last 18 months, some of it, I guess, being contributed to by COVID, but there's also privacy changes, iOS changes. A lot of these businesses, I imagine, that are smaller bootstrap businesses were leveraging paid social and organic social to drive their message. And that whole landscape's changed a lot in the last 18 months. How have you been able to help them, evolve their marketing skills?
So really, it comes down to scale, right? So you need a team that's not only able to do Facebook and Instagram, but also do TikTok and Snapchat, and also expand from Shopify to Amazon and expand from Amazon to wholesale. So the challenge and the job being asked of these entrepreneurs is really unrealistic. There's no amount of time in the day where you're going to be able to figure out all these things for yourself. So, for me, obviously I'm biased, but I think a large percentage of companies that are not, let's say, Allbirds or let's say Warby Parker and have that kind of size and scale, they really should be part of a larger construct where they can plug into these resources, so they don't have to try to build it on their own.
Is there kind of a playbook, once they become part of Win, you kind of have this checklist of the 20 things that you want to, you have a platform, you've constructed it. Now we've done it 4 times, we're doing it a 5th time. These are the things we need to conquer.
There is. So there's an integration checklist that we go through that spans, the first 6 months and then even into 12 months. And that's exactly, what you'd expect. It's going through each of the revenue channels from e-com to Amazon to wholesale. It goes through the back end kind of systems. We implement systems like NetSuite across our companies to make that flow of information and financial information easier and more trackable. We consolidate business operations into our partner 3PLs. We look at both domestic and international revenue opportunities. So there's a lot of things depending on where the business is at its own maturity level that we then integrate into our, let's call it our Win master plan.
You started, I think, this business roughly 2017 as Kyle takes a swig of Hint water. Hint founder was also a guest on this podcast very early on. So you've been at it since 2017, 5 years now. For the most part, other than, the pandemic year or the immediate year from the pandemic, prices have been high. To buy companies. Seemingly the last 3 months, multiples have changed. Is that true? And if so, how are you dealing with that?
Yeah, I think, listen, we built this, call it efficient operating system and consolidation play within a bull market. So, the fact that we've been able to more or less double every year since we started it, is a testament to the fact that I think it's a validation that it works and it's necessary in the space. That said, to your question on pricing, certainly now in June of 2022, the last 3 months have been a lot tighter than the 12 and 18 and 24 months before that. There is a lag. I would say conversations that are happening today, the tone has changed a little bit, and mainly because there's less free capital flowing into this broader D2C space. So for those that are not sitting on a ton of cash, they're really trying to figure out, how to build those reserves. And I think, in some cases that'll still come from outside capital as private investment. And in other cases, that'll be, again, joining a larger enterprise. There are other folks consolidating in the space besides us. We end up focusing on larger established branded businesses, but there are other folks, competitors, even within our own space, that are looking at smaller businesses as an example to consolidate as well. So I think, there's a lot of options out there today for entrepreneurs. I think the advice that we end up giving folks is, look, try to make sure that you're set up sustainably for the longer term. And we're looking at that in a 2-year outlook and making sure that we have runway and access to capital to manage the business for that 2-year period in case things end up getting a bit more compressed over the next 12, 18 months.
Got it. Good stuff. Great story. Really interesting background, and I love what you're doing with Win. So thank you. So we get to the end of the show here. We do a 2-minute drill, 7 questions, 1 or 2 word answers. I always say nobody ever gives me 1 or 2 word answers, but I always say that, and then the guest is the guest. I let them say whatever they like. You ready?
Sure.
All right. A brand that you admire or that inspires you.
I'm going to go back to history on that. I'm going to go back to Tory Burch. I think incredible growth story, incredible business that I was able to have a front row view.
Favorite app on your phone?
I'm going to go with Calm. I use a daily meditation on Calm. That's fantastic.
Okay, I might have to hit you up and find out which one that is. But every time I do meditation, I can't wait for it to be over. The last website other than Amazon that you shopped from?
Easy, homesick.com.
Something that you're not good at, but that you wish that you were?
I'm terrible at planning. I'm more of a go with the flow kind of high level person. So fortunately, my wife is great at planning and she helps me stay alive.
The yin and the yang. charitable organization that you're passionate about?
I mean, because it's fresh in mind, and we've really leaned into this. The work that Love Your Melon has done on pediatric cancer, and this is across hospitals and charities, has been remarkable. So that's been a focus for me.
That's great. If you had one superpower, what would it be?
So I think this is a combo of how I was raised and then working with Chris Birch for a long time. But ultimately, I would say my superpower is tenacity. Just finding a way, no matter what that path is, to get it done.
And the last one is, other than your family, what's your most prized possession?
So we have a small lake cottage up in the Adirondacks where I was raised. And going up there for a couple weeks in the summer, which we plan to do every August, is such a gift. So I think just having access to that special place and that little cabin is my most non-family prized possession. I was going to say my dog Gibson, but I'm gonna lump him in with family.
Family. Yeah. Everybody puts their dog in with their family. I get that. Kyle, where can people reach out to you on social media if they would like to?
So social media, as far as handle, at Kyle Widrick, KyleWidrick. I love chatting with founders. So if there's any founders out there that want to chat about their business, it is Kyle@winbg.com as far as my email.
Okay, that's great. Well, look, good success to you. Thanks very much for the time, and enjoy the rest of your summer.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mark. Enjoyed it.
That's it. Today's game ball goes to Kyle Widrick for coming on the Marketing Playbook. To me, today's 3 game-winning marketing plays were as follows. Number 1, plan for the future. As the economy is now apparently moving into a downturn, it's a good lesson for brands to realize that you must have a plan for when things get tougher. Be sure you understand where you can be more conservative so you can weather the storm. Number 2, we heard Kyle say everything's more difficult than you think it will be when you start a business. Establish your playbook up front, but be flexible as your results and market conditions can change. And number 3, invest in people. We've heard it before. In order to keep good people, you have to do more than just pay them. Educate them, mentor them, demonstrate to them that you're not afraid to get them better at their jobs on your dime. Thank you, Playbook marketers, for listening to another episode. If you want to check out more pages of the Marketing Playbook, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast spot and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. You can also follow us on Twitter at DetailsInteract and learn more at detailsinteractive.com. Until next time, the devil is in the details.